When Elie was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, he was described as a messenger to mankind, a passionate witness to humanity's capacity for the worst, and a powerful example of humanity's capacity for the best.
I thank Elie Wiesel for his courage. I appreciate his leadership in the establishment of the Holocaust Museum on our National Mall.
As we stood at Buchenwald, you said, "Memory has become the sacred duty of all people of goodwill." It's a duty we all share, to bear witness, but also to ensure that such a tragedy never happens again. Thank you, Elie, for showing us the way.
I do believe, as a Hasid of Vishnitz, that the Rebbe of Lubavitch today is probably the greatest Jewish figure in the Jewish world. There is no doubt to my mind that few spiritual leaders had such vision, such courage, such determination, and such talent. I have a profound affection and admiration for the Rebbe. I have met the Rebbe years and years ago, and we spent nights and nights together, struggling. I was struggling at least. I had problems. And I love to be with the Rebbe. I have letters now that one day will be, I think, more important probably than my own book. And I remember once I wrote him about, I sent him a book, a novel, and he sent me back a 12-page letter. And the novel dealt with problems of faith and God. He finished, he said, "Why don't you get married?"
For a while, he saw that I disagreed with him on getting married. There are many letters which you don't have, personal letters, about getting married and what it means to get married. But he did not follow my protest. He understood it, but he didn't follow it.
You must make every effort to tear yourself away from your memories and adopt a lifestyle with a stable structure, married life, and establish a Jewish home and a Jewish family. This will certainly bring about Hitler's true downfall, that he was not successful in his attempts at making it that there be one less Vishnitzer Chassid in the world.
When I got married in Jerusalem, the most beautiful bouquet of flowers I received in my life, probably, was a house with a little note there, and then I got a letter.
The Rebbe never accepted any rationalization for how God could allow 6 million innocent men, women, and children to perish. But neither did he accept any justification to lose faith in God. Here the Rebbe combines compassion and reason in his approach.
Wie das hat gewirkt auf die alle Unionen, wo wir fragen, bei Negev, zu Kiem, Am Yisrael, Hanitzchi, ihr das bedugme, wie gesagt, früher, als einer sagt, Jinyan, bemäschig von einer Rega, Echod, und davon will dann sein, auf Meja, Veetzim, Shono, und dann sein in a Jinyan, Ikri, wie der Jinyan von Amuno, Metzies, Abelo, Metzies, Verschäfet, Koloritz, Vechulu. Wo der Pfarrer von der Kirche gesehen bepeert, als Barube der Rube von Maiminim, Bnei Maiminim, ist nicht Chase geworden, der Kirche Amuno, sie zugekommen, ich hoch ist Bruris auf Aschgoche Protis, bis in Eifanim, nicht nur von Nissim, Eloboshim Beteva, nur Nissim Gluyim.
Welcome, everyone. Pleasure to have you here. My name is Rabbi Yankee Barron. I'm the director of Chabad Development City. And we're so happy to put on this program. It's part of Chabad Development City's Holocaust Education Series. We have a very special speaker tonight, Lynne Farbman, who I had the pleasure of meeting last year at our Chabad public seder. And we were talking about meaningful things. And we had 45 people sitting here at the seder. And Lynne said something very meaningful to everyone, which caught everyone by surprise. That she was a Holocaust survivor. She had joined us for the seder. We talked about freedom, right? And redemption. Lynne captures that in a very big way. And I won't steal your story. You'll tell everyone your story, but it's a really, really amazing story. And that's a plug-in for Chabad's public seder. So you never know who you'll meet at our seder.
Right.
If you want to sign up for the seder, there's some information in the back, as well as information for our Purim party, which will be next Friday at 6 p.m. Chabad Development City, Purim out west. We also have some Mishlach Manot that you can take home and share with others as a takeaway from today's event. I wanted to thank our sponsor, someone who I know for a very long time, the Chasnow family, but specifically Mr. Bob Chasnow, who I grew up with, and he taught me at a young age the importance of teaching about the Holocaust. For many years, he actually spearheaded an effort in the public schools and schools that students should write an essay about the Holocaust. He awarded them, and he's doing this in honor of his father, who wouldn't stop speaking about the Holocaust. So thank you, Mr. Bob Chasnow, for your contribution to tonight's event. It's very meaningful and very kind, all your contributions to the community. As well, I wanted to tell everyone how proud we are that today's event is very accessible. Chabad of Ellicott City I was recognized as a faith ambassador for the Kennedy Krieger Institute, most recently by the governor's office, for our initiatives in ensuring that all Jewish activities and programs are accessible to those that want it and need it. So we have an ASL interpreter here, Carol, who will be signing today's event, as well as a live captioner on the Zoom for all those who need captions or sign language. I got into this because the governor's office started following Chabad of Ellicott City. And they started seeing all the events we're doing, and they wanted to make sure that all the events that Chabad is doing are accessible. So with their support, encouragement, and community collaboration, we look forward to putting on many, many future events. Though I'm no expert, but it just takes a little bit of a heart to make sure that everyone would be included in all Chabad events. So without further ado, I want to welcome Lynne Farbman, who is gracious to share her story with us, and your husband here as well.
Yes, he is.
And we will start off. She will share the first part of the event. She'll share her story, and then we'll conclude with questions and answers. So if anyone has any questions, we'll keep it to the end. Write it down. Try to remember it. And without further ado, we welcome Lynne.
Thank you. Thanks so much. I want to tell you about something that happened to me, and I'm hoping it doesn't disrupt our talk, but I decided to go ahead with it anyway. Okay. Yes, yeah, of course. So my teacher actually is here, but I think she went to the wrong building also. She is my speech therapy teacher, and I am having speech therapy is because I had a stroke about 2 months ago. Okay, I'm doing very well. Everything is fine except that I can't speak very well, but I'm making progress, and so I just wanted you to understand that that's what's going on. So I want to tell you about my story, and my story is very unusual. In fact, there's probably very few people who had my story. I was born Well, that's part of the problem. I wasn't sure when I was born. And it took a long time for me to understand exactly what I date, when I was really, what year I was born. When I was very young, I thought that I was born in Germany in January of 1946, which would have meant that I would have been born after the war. Okay. But my place of birth was listed was at Munich. Okay. Okay. If it's, I hope it's long. Okay, good. Okay. So, so I thought that I was born in Munich. That's what I was told, and which is a big city in Munich, in Germany. And then I was also told that I was from a small town called Mühldorf, which is near Munich. And then I was told, and so I said, okay. But it was still confusing because I was giving information that was different. But when I was a small child, I didn't ask too many questions. But then when I got to be about 10 to 12 years old, I began to think more about the world. And I began to understand that it would be very unlikely that I could have been born in January of 1945 in Germany, as my parents would have been in a concentration camp, because we knew they were Jewish. So it didn't make sense. But then I got to be a teenager, and I finally went to my mother and I said to her, well, when was I born? Was I born in 45 or 46? And she said, well, I don't know. And she just was vague about it. I thought, well, she would know that, right? I mean, she was the one that gave me birth name. Hi, hello. That's my teacher. She's helping a lot, believe me. And so again, I didn't get the straight answer. And it was even worse because my mother wouldn't tell me exactly what it was. She was just sort of avoiding my questions. So when in my late 60s, I got married. And I thought, well, maybe I'm old enough now to find out exactly when it was that I was born. And again, I get the same answer, which is, well, I'll tell you later, which made no sense. But even more was confusing is that my citizenship papers, which I had gotten in those years, showed that I was born in January of 45. And I couldn't ask my mother again because now she's telling me she doesn't want to talk about it. All right. So I thought, well, maybe it's just a problem with paperwork. You know? But that's one of the problems when your families doesn't they tell you the story and tell you the truth, because then you wonder what's really going on here. Okay. Well, I met some people in Germany, and these are people that I had met in Germany, but I did not know when I was really born. But I told this lady, she was a friend of mine from Mühldorf, that maybe, there's more to my story. And she said she would look into it. She was a German woman, had a very interesting background herself. And anyway, finally, there was some information that she wanted to tell me that was something that I didn't want to hear. And she was trying to be honest, you know. Anyway, there was a meeting in Mühldorf, which is that little town we were talking about, which was part of it was of Dachau. And she held a meeting with a group of people who are from that community, but they were very educated people. They had done a lot of reading and what they told me was that I was really born in January of 45, and that I was the only baby that was allowed to live. Okay, that I was the only baby that was allowed to live. And my mother was, of course, she gave birth to me in that a concentration camp. And for some reason, they didn't kill me or her, because all the children and the mothers would be killed. That was the rule, but nobody lived. And so then why is it this one baby was allowed to live? And I really can't say that I have the answer now, because we don't really, I mean, it's many, many years ago. I didn't get the information from my parents because they didn't tell me about it. I was about 70 by the time I found out. I'm 80 now, okay? And so whatever I know is because of hearsay or from some information, some people that wrote something a little bit, or it was online or something, but it's very, very confusing. And there are many things that I probably will never, ever know. But there are some things that are quite interesting. If we told, I learned a lot. First of all, there were people that in that community that kept me alive, kept my mother alive. My mother, she had birth in that camp. And yet the ladies who were prisoners themselves. They were taking help my mother and me, so that they would get a break, for take care of a brand new baby. And they, I mean, these are just friends. I don't even know who they were. They were just people that she knew who were taking care of her. They cared enough to risk their own lives, because they were probably allowed to eat. They didn't get good food. They didn't, but they risked their own lives to take care of me and my mother. Really an amazing. And there were many, many incidents like that. For example, we heard this is just a few years ago. Somebody told us that there was a farmer that lived very close to this camp. And this farmer would get milk for my mother, okay, to feed me. Now my mother, I was allergic, okay. So here I am, this brand new baby, hardly any food, but I needed the milk, but that was not good for me. I would spit up. So they would give my mother the milk. She would then feed me. And that's how I lived. I survived. But somebody was taking care of me. Somebody had to do that, made it available to me. So it's amazing to think that these people had nothing themselves, barely, and yet they were trying to help me. It's just unbelievable. It makes you realize that in the concentration camp, people were treated so horribly, and yet there were a lot of good people there who cared. It's a beautiful story. There were another example is that they had to hide the baby. Right? How are they going to keep a baby alive when there's guards all over the place? So they had to find the baby and keep the baby protected, and yet they did it. I don't know. We're talking about January through to May. That's several months, so how is it this was possible? I would love to have met these people who took care of me and my mother, and there are some names in some of the literature, but we know nothing about them. They're I guess somebody could spend a lot of time talking to somebody, who could get the information, but I've, at my age and with my problems, I don't think that's something I would do. But maybe one of these days somebody will find information that would be helpful, in the worst circumstances, there are some really pretty good people out there. And I think it's important to remember that, for us, for me, So to go back, let me tell a little about my parents and this woman, this man, Sylvain Kaufman, is quite interesting. He was the one who really was able to find the information about me, because he wrote this book that explained, it was his memoir of what happened when he was in the concentration camps, and he was in several country camps, and he was able, he had information about my father, the father who was really not my father, because I thought that he was the one that raised me, and I thought he was, but it turned out that he and my mother only met when the war was over. But that's something they didn't even tell me. I didn't know until after the war, after I was grown, and they were dead. They didn't tell me any of this. But I found out that my biological father, which quite interesting. I've never met him because he probably was killed during the war. That's my guess. But my mother, we found this out, which she did not tell us, that she and my father were together in Mühldorf in the camp in a short while my mother was pregnant by him, and then she was gone. She left. I mean, he was gone. He was probably killed, but he was, he was my father. I mean, and so it would be interesting at some point to figure out who was he. And we know that he probably was married. He was married to my mother because there was papers that we found where they were, my mother's name is on the papers that he was married to her. So the story gets thicker and thicker, because, and this is all in the past few years that I'm finding about these things. It has a lot to do with the DNAs, because there are people who are able to get that information and are able to find actually who are your parents. And so I was able to get a little bit of information of that. So I do know that my mother had been married previously, which we did not know that. It was, and that was important to me, because before I would worry, maybe somebody hurt her, that maybe somebody that she, raped her. Who knows? I mean, anything could have happened, but we know that we believe that this man, his name was Shlomo, okay, was my biological father. So that's interesting as well. This is all after my parents were gone, and I found all this. It's really amazing what you can find out today, because of all this, the studies, the DNA, and all that other stuff. I also have found the Frenchman, Sylvain Kaufman. We found out that he survived. He grew up, I mean, he lived in France. He made a lot of money. He did very well. And his two daughters and son both live in France. And so I'm hoping I'm going to be going to Germany in April. Actually, there's a big meeting, about Dachau, okay? They usually come, I usually go to that once a year. And they invite me to come and they pay for us to go because I'm considered, I'm a survivor. And they asked me to speak. Now I'm not going to be speaking this much. Usually give them a big talk and all that, but I can't do it right now. Hopefully in a few more years, a few more weeks with my teacher, who's right here, I'll get better. And it's amazing. It really has helped me a lot. It's amazing. I never thought it would happen. At first, I thought I'd never talk again. That's really what happened. Initially, when I had a stroke in my brain, and I couldn't talk. So I am talking a little bit, not only 2 months ago. So I was talking. So that's pretty, I think pretty amazing. I was going to talk, oh yeah, it's the Frenchman, okay? He's quite an interesting part, but he wanted to meet me after, he knew that I was still alive, and he was looking for me. And he would put ads in the paper in Israel and in France to see if he could find this baby that he knew had met. And he helped me live, because he was the one, he was one of the people who helped me to get food and all kinds of stuff. He took a special interest in me. And so he really tried to find me. But I know that if my mother had ever found that he was looking for me, my guess is she wouldn't have told me, because the whole story was built on sort of not the lies. Because I'm not supposed to know that my father was not my biological father. It's a trouble. It's a shame. It's a shame, because I might have been to meet this man who now is gone, But I am going to meet, I hope, when we go to Germany, I will meet these people, and they're coming for the first time. They're coming to Germany, and hopefully we'll have a chance to meet. So that'll be very interesting. Another piece of information, We'll know more about them. So let me just finish this. So I wanted to tell you about my parents, because it's about me, but it's really about them. Because had I not been able to they were able to raise me in some very difficult circumstances. I came to this country with nothing, really. We lived in Cincinnati, Ohio, only because they sent us there. We didn't know we were going. They just sent us there, Highest sent us. And my father did not want to go to Greece. He could have gone to Greece. He was from a Sephardic Jew, and he had a wonderful life over there. But then they killed so many, 90% of the Sephardic Jews in Salonika were killed. They didn't know what was going on. They had no idea what was happening. And so he said he's not going back there because it's a cemetery. He doesn't want to live there. But and then my mother did not want to go to Vilna, which is where she was from, because she said that it was communist. And she knew what it was like to live in a communist country. And she said she did never want to live with them like that. So they waited until 1949 to come to the United States, because that's all they could go. And they were happy. They were really happy to go. And the only reason they were able to go is because President Truman, I don't know if you know that story. That's amazing. He really looked out for the Jewish people, and he allowed I think it's 100,000 refugees come to the United States, because the State Department was extremely anti-Semitic. Even during the war, there were so many Jews that could have been, or people would have been, could be alive, but this anti-Semitic in the State Department was horrible, and so many people didn't live. They didn't live because of this group of people. There was only a few of them, but they were horrible, very anti-Semitic. And so luckily, my parents in 1949 came back to Cincinnati, and my mother was pregnant with my sister. And luckily, she was able to, I mean, my mother was like in the seventh pregnancy, 7th month. And I think today they probably wouldn't have allowed her to stay to fly, but she did, you know. And also we had a unpressured plane. It was a military plane. And so what happened was that it was disgusting. It was very, I remember it because I was throwing up the whole time. You know, it was not pressurized, you know. So that was my first memory of America. Okay. But anyway, we had a good life in Cincinnati, and it's a good place to grow up as a kid, and just a couple more things I want to tell you about my parents. My mother was a very talented seamstress, and she could just watch people make that they had their clothes that she could just by looking at them make their clothes beautiful. Seamstress, and she did all the Jewish cooking, you know, the kreplach and the chicken soup and the challah and the real gefilte ship. She was a wonderful cook. And then my father, you know, had the whole Sephardic tradition, which it's very different in a way, you know, because they love to have fun, you know, so they would dance and they would play games, and they would have wonderful food, you know, the Greek olives and feta cheese and the barekas. So we had both traditions, which are really nice. And most Jewish people in this area don't see that, you know. So we were lucky that we had that. My father was very involved in this little synagogue. It was a Sephardic synagogue, and he would speak Ladino. I'm so sorry that I did not really understand it. And then another thing that my parents talked about was they were very proud Americans, very proud. And my father always bragged about the fact that he voted every election. But then when he became a naturalized citizen, even though he was for a long time, he was an hourly worker for many years of his life. So he had to lose his wages to you know, he lost his money, you know, but he voted no matter what. And part of it is because he missed that on his education. He was 16 years old and he was playing soccer on the streets of Salonika, and they grabbed him. The Nazis came, all these kids, young kids, and they took them to a trucks in the middle of Greece, and they treat them terribly. You know, I mean, he's a little kid, young kid, and this is what happened to him. And that was the end of education. His education no more. You know, he had gone to school. You know, his brother had gone to school in Italy because he was older than him, but that was the end of his education. And so, so in his retirement, he decided that he's going to make up for it, and he enrolled to the community college in Tucson, Arizona. And after 10 years of going to college, it took a long time, you know, every I don't know how long it took, but anyway, and my youngest sister helped a lot. He was 60 years old, and he finally graduated from high school. I mean college, and he was in the newspaper in Tucson. He was very proud of that. So when my parents spoke about their lives, and they spoke all over the community. They were very open about talking what happened to him, because they felt it was important that people heard what they had been through, you know, so that they don't do anything like this themselves, okay? And they would speak to people in schools and on, even the military people, they would come and listen to him. They would come to the generals and he would give talks. It's amazing. They were very interested in what they would tell them. And they would try to focus on their full and happy lives before the war, really, because they had very wonderful lives. My father used to talk that his life was like heaven when he was in Greece, had a wonderful life there. And they would talk about the positive meaning and for their lives in the present and their hope for the future. And my parents, despite all they had been through, they raised 3 responsible, caring children. They lived honorable lives and they loved America and Israel. And I want to thank you for letting me tell you about 2 really amazing people and for allowing me to keep my promise to my mother. Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, so I'll go grab the question.
Okay,
If you have a question,
of course.
I
Yeah,
need to. Okay.
that's okay.
The people on Zoom, deaf people on Zoom will need to see her.
Okay. You want to hold this?
What can those of us who are Christians do to help protect Jewish people when others are anti-Semitic, even in this country, in this day and age? How can we be of help?
That's a good question. I mean, the very fact that you're here says something a lot. You know, you're here. And so you obviously know a little bit about what Jewish people have had to go through. And today, especially now, I don't think until recently I have felt it so strongly. But October the 7th made a huge change. And I came to the conclusion that it's dangerous here. We're dangerous and have dangerous. And I'm even careful about, you know, I go to a little synagogue downtown in Baltimore, and I love it. But you know, I'm very aware of where I am and where I'm looking and who I'm talking, and that's something I never really thought that before. And I'm glad people are listening and paying attention. But I think maybe you can speak in your own community about what goes on, you know, how it affects you to see Jewish people are really afraid. At least I think for myself, you know, maybe we shouldn't be so afraid. I don't know. All I know is that there's been a lot of bad things happen, and we're threatened, and the students come and do things there, and I don't know. I don't. I wonder if anybody thinks about these things too. I can't be the only one. I know. Anybody fearful of that? What's going on? Yeah. No. I don't want to change my life. I want to go to things that I want to do what I want to do. On the other hand, I'm much aware. You know, if you're I mean, you know, if you're wearing a yarmulke, you should, I don't know. Are people worried about that? I don't know. I know years ago, we used to travel quite a bit, and we were in Scandinavia, and we were done. This was a long time ago. We were told, don't go to the synagogue there until you can wear your kippah, but when you're inside the synagogue, not outside. And we're talking about 10 years ago, at least, maybe even longer. Do you remember that? I talked to my husband about that. We're like, Really? In Scandinavia, we have to be afraid of that? But we are. And now it's even worse.
Any other questions? You want to come up, if you want to hand her the microphone.
Right.
Hi, it's nice to meet you. Thank you for being here.
Of course. Thank you.
Stand in the front, stand in the front.
Okay. So, your story is impactful for me because I also do not know my biological father. And so you mentioned DNA and that you had found his name.
I did.
Have you found his relatives at all? And so that's one question. I also have like a survivor grandmother.
You did?
Yeah, but I also wanted to ask you about how your faith has impacted your journey.
Okay, well, I did find some relatives. And actually two of them. One was in Israel. And I met them online, and it was nice. It was a little language, a little bit of a problem, but I was glad to meet them. And if whenever I go to Israel one day, I will talk to them and hopefully meet them. You know, they haven't been here. And then we met another in that same family who lives in Chicago, and I met him also. And we talked, but it didn't go anywhere, you know. I know where he is, you know, but I've tried to reach out to him and I don't know, there's never showed much interest in. So I don't know what that's all about. But there are two people related to my biological father, you know, and the DNA shows that we're related, okay? And so there are other people, you know, who I found my biological father. Okay. And the other story you asked me about my faith, and that's very interesting. It's a good question because we were always kosher, okay, but not strict, you know. And we always came to shul. We went to shuls, and we felt my parents, my father, it's very interesting. My father, my Sephardic father, used to tell me all the time, go to shul, go to shul, go to shul. He loved me to go to shul, all of us go to shul. Okay. One of my sisters is pretty from, but they're kosher and all that. My other sister married a man who was not Jewish, but she's more sort of interesting. She was sort of Jewish, you know, had a Jewish heart, you know. And I think maybe I have sort of influenced her as well. She's younger than I am. And I say, you know, just come to shul with me, you know. And I do. I mean, we go to shul together. But what I ask, what I've happened, I really, I like going to shul. It helps me somehow, and I'm not even clear why that is. But I feel that I feel good there. I feel like I believe that I was meant to be there. I don't know why. Maybe because I had gone through all this. My parents wanted me to go to real. I mean, we weren't from, but we believed in being Jewish. They really believed in it, and especially since they had gone through so much to be Jewish, they were believe. I mean, you know, and so and one of the reasons I go to shul too is I know that my father, who is not my biological father, I know my father wants me to go to shul. I know he's with me when I go to shul. I don't know why that is. I can feel it. As soon as I feel it, and I wasn't able to go to shul much because of my problem, you know. I mean, I didn't even think I would be able to talk, you know. And I miss it. I really miss it. And I tried my best to find a way to get there. That trouble is that the shul I go to it's got a big step, but a lot of steps. And it's because I have a little heart issue now. I do the steps so well. but I still want to go. So I'm looking for another show. I don't have to go all those steps. Okay, fine. We live in Pikesville area, and so there's plenty of shows to go. We'll find someplace to go. So
Yeah,
I don't know
the
if that answers the question, but I believe it. I believe. I don't know why. I do. You know, I'm alive. If somebody kept they're alive. I mean, you know, they kept me alive, you know, and Hashem was one of them. I believe that. Okay. Wasn't the people, but Hashem.
You want to come up with the microphone? Yeah, stand up and bring the mic. So just don't go to the right. Left.
It's right right there.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Really enjoyed this.
Oh, thank you.
But I didn't understand everything.
I
so
know, I'm sorry.
No. That was me.
Oh.
It was me. During the war, you were where?
I was in the concentration camp. I was born in Dachau.
You were born in Dachau.
Yeah.
And did you find that, this is a stupid question.
That's okay.
The guards there, it's Germany.
Somebody kept me alive.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them, I would think that, I really believe that there were some guards who tried to help. I don't know. What else can you say about that?
Did your mother ever talk to you?
My mother did not. She didn't tell me anything. And I feel badly about that because I wish I'd known more. You know, there's so little I know. She did, this is deliberate. I asked her over a couple times. How come, you know, it doesn't make sense. I was born this year, that was this year. And then she would say, well, I'll tell you later. Oh, that tells me that's the answer. This is my answer. And my father knew he better keep his mouth shut. And he wasn't going to say anything, you know, because he probably knew that that was her child. I was her child, and she was going to make the decisions about it.
Do you know how long you were in that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, I was born in January 16th of 1945, and it was over. The war was over. It was May. I think it might have been 3 o'clock. I can't say the word. It was May the 6th or something like that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. I could tell you an interesting story about my father. Okay, see, he told me these stories. She didn't, but he did. Not so much about me, but about his life. So when he was, so he didn't meet my mother until after the war. Okay, found this out, and so he told me that he only met her right after the war, and my mother was very, evidently she was a very pretty woman. She was, and all these men were interested in her. Okay. Everybody, they were always trying to get married because they didn't have a family anymore. So they trying to find their family. And so these men were interested in my mother, even though she had a child. And Mr. The man I was telling you about, wait a minute, the one who, the one that wrote the book, the French book, okay? Anyway, he went to my mother and said, I think you should marry the Greek man. That was my father. Okay. Why? Well, because he knew my father, and he knew my mother, his brother who was killed during the war. One amazing man, a handsome, brilliant man. And he said that if he will. Okay, this is what he said, that he will take good care of your child. And guess what? That was 100% true. He was the most wonderful father. He used to, and I told this in I didn't talk about it, but I should tell you this. He used to here I am, I couldn't speak English. All I could speak was German, right? And Yiddish. And no, I didn't, I was terrified. I think I was really scared. I was a little kid, right? And he used to sit there to hold my hand, and I was afraid of the dark. And he would literally, I mean, he worked every day, and he would hold my hand all night because I was so scared. That's what he would do. Oh, there were so many things he did. I didn't know how to tell time. I don't know why I couldn't tell time. He says, I'll show you. And he taught me how to tell time, He had a lot of patience. My mother didn't was like that, not like that. But there's so many things he did to help us, And he just and so these people told my mother to marry my father. And they were right. He's a very fine, wonderful, wonderful man. And so I was very lucky, because that was one of the problems, because when I found out that this was not my father, I went, oh my God. I mean, I went through trauma. It was trauma. I mean, I was 40 years old. I mean, I was 70 years old. I'm sorry. I was 70 years old and I found this out. You know what it's like to find that out? And now here I am 80 and I'm better, but it took a long time, to tell you.
I'm really touched by your story. How many languages
Oh,
do you know? Do you study Greek or no other language?
I only wish I did. Once you grow up as an American, you don't know any more languages. Yiddish, I did new Yiddish. I did, which I'm glad. I'm happy I learned that. My father did teach the Ladina, but it's not the same because there's so many people who know Yiddish here. Not every generation's different, but I grew up with it, many of my friends knew it. And so that was wonderful that we could hear it, Even today, I mean, my husband knows Yiddish because he grew up with it, But my father, he grew up with the Ladino, and it would have been nice to have known it. It really would have been wonderful. I wish I didn't, but I did. But my father spoke Ladino, and he spoke Greek, and he spoke French, and he went to what else? Oh, Italian. Also Italian. Also, the Europeans know lots of languages, and then my mother knew of course, the Yiddish and Russian. She spoke Russian and Polish, and so they knew a lot of languages. The thing is, they didn't know the language that they knew. My mother and father really did not have a common language, except that my father had to learn Yiddish because they were all Jews. That means Ashkenazic Jews. So we had no choice. It's sort of funny, but he was a very flexible guy, and so he did what he had to do. He did what he had to do. Yeah.
Thank you. So Greek, Hebrew, French.
Hebrew, yeah, the Hebrew, right? Yeah, of course. My father was fluent in Hebrew. Went to shul all the time. He loved shul.
So I want to thank Lynn for telling over her story. Quite a phenomenal story.
Thank you.
And there's lots to unpack. Almost make a movie. No screenwriters, Hollywood hasn't picked up on it, but it's really a phenomenal story. It's a unique story. It's
By the way, people have asked me to make it a movie.
No, it's
true.
It's a phenomenal story. It's very unique. And I do know a lot of people in the Holocaust. I know Mr. Eli Rosenbaum, he's lead prosecutor for the State Department
Oh,
to prosecute Nazi war crimes, prosecute Ukraine war crimes. And he actually, I researched every person like, when I heard your story, I wanted to research this. I reached out to them. He actually told me, because he's interviewed, I don't know how many Holocaust survivors. He told me in Dachau there actually weren't many women. It was very unique to have women. There was mainly men.
that's
There
right.
were
We've been there.
in Dachau. But the fact that you survived, I think the message, I'm just sharing my own thoughts, if I could be open. You know, during the Holocaust, a lot of terrible things happened. But we see these sort of, I call them God's wink.
Yeah.
God winks at us and tells us, you know, I'm still here, right? We can't explain why the Holocaust happened or why these terrible things happened. But the fact that you survived, right, with such a story is a clear indication that there was a God. God was there. God wanted you to survive to tell this story. We had a Holocaust survivor 2 years ago, Lily Malik. She also had a similar story where she actually met Mengele, and she hurt her foot. She couldn't move. She literally couldn't move, and she was in front of Mengele. Mengele says, "Run."
That's how she survived. That's how she survived.
And what could have happened? And she told him, what could have happened? He could have shot me right now. What could have happened? Just he was on one foot, but she ran and she got away. And she now has a beautiful mishpacha. She has a beautiful family here in Howard County, right? Many grandkids. From that moment, she said that was like the moment where she realized, right, there's something else watching over me. And you know, when we've all been struggling with everything happening in Gaza and all the hostages, and especially this tragic story of the Bibat's children and their demise, right? And those that lived and those that unfortunately did not survive. But those that survived, we're hearing, you watch the interviews with the various hostages that have come out. They say there's some abnormal sense of faith, a crazy feeling that something is watching over me. And again, God forbid, there's nothing wrong with what we've been going on. There's no explanation for that, for the horror. But hearing your story as a child, I haven't heard another Holocaust survivor who was an infant, right? An infant surviving the Holocaust, right? And there's clear, I mean, if anyone wants to research your story, it's available on the United States Holocaust Museum website, and there's a lot of literature. I know someone from Brandeis was doing the story, but it's really a phenomenal story. It's something that I can't really, I'm sharing unorganized thoughts, but it's something you can't really wrap your head around. Maybe you shouldn't. But it's your story is really amazing, and I feel very privileged that you, even though you had gone through a small stroke, and I know this hour here was probably very difficult.
I hope it wasn't too difficult for everyone else. I'm worried about that.
But you felt, again, this is another example of effort, right? All you've been through, and all you, right? But you feel it's important that the message, your story is heard. So I think for all the youth here, if something is challenging in your life, right, you can always persevere, you can always try harder. And you're a living example today in 2025 with all the anti-Semitism. I don't know if you statistically 80%, there's an 80% increase in anti-Semitic incidents in 2024 in Maryland. It's your story is so important, but I think, again, to send a message that we've survived and we will continue to survive, and these acts of violence, anti-Semitism should stop because it's immoral, it's wrong, it's what the Nazis did. On the other hand, you also show on a different point that you're a shining Jew, right? You feel it's important to come to synagogue. You feel it's important, right? Even though withstanding all the harassment and all the terrible things that Jews have gone through, I'm Jewish. Not apologetic about it. I'm happy about it, and the Jewish people will
Persevere.
Will persevere, and the dustbin of history, all the nations that wanted to eradicate us and to persecute us, they're no longer here, and you're here. You're here telling your story. So mazel tov to that. Mazel tov to the Jewish people. I just before if you wanted to share one last
I want
thing.
to say something. Yeah, it's very interesting that we brought this up because the work that, I don't know if you know it, the work I do, I'm a therapist actually. Okay. And when I had my stroke, I was really worried about, was I I'm a little too old to be doing this, but anyway, I still like doing it and people like me, so. And then I had the stroke, and I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to lose my clients. And I thought, okay, I'll have to do whatever I have to do. I got to live, that's the first thing, right? You got to live, right? And it's amazing how many people are very concerned about me. And many of them knows that I'm Jewish, because I don't really say it, but I don't know, they know it, I don't know. And they will send me messages, thinking about my, they even said, prayers. I'm talking about Jewish things, and I'm thinking, that's really interesting. I appreciate that. I really appreciate that, knowing that I'm Jewish, not because I've said it that much, but I guess they know it, and they're respectful. They're very respectful. And I think that is very nice. The other thing I wanted to say is that you were talking about telling the stories. There's the Holocaust Museum, but there's another organization that's in California that does a lot of, they will interview people, and very much like the Holocaust Museum. And they've been asking me to speak, because and I was about to do it when I had my stroke. And I said, I can't do this now. But he called me, this man just called me this week and said, when I come back when I go to Germany, okay, I want him to, he wants me to talk. Even though I talk like this, is that okay? He says, absolutely, do it, go. It's important. So I said, okay. And then I'll be better. I'll even better, because every month I'm better, right? Is that right? I'm giving you the credit for it, because she has helped me so much. Thank you. She's great. Yes. These girls are terrific. They really are.
Thank you so much. And if anyone wants to ask the questions.
Sure.
This is the formal conclusion of the program.
Okay.
Thank you all for coming. Before you leave, next week is Purim.
Yeah.
And we celebrate another victory of the Jewish people, the victory of survival of Jewish people from the Persians. The Persians are no longer here, but we're here, and we give out food to celebrate it. Right? It's a joke that Jackie Mason has. They want to kill us, God saved us. Now let's eat. We always have a little bit of a nosh to celebrate our survival. And I think with a little bit of the chuckling, I think that's how Holocaust survivors got through it, even though they went through such terrible things. But a lot of them, they always have a sense of humor, right? The Jewish humor, which keeps us happy. And this month we're supposed to be happy. And so what I want everyone to do is, if you could take one of these boxes, take one for yourself, also take one to share with someone else.
Yeah.
And so you'll share the next Friday, which is important, you'll share that box with someone that you know, make their life a little happier. And there's also some nosh there and invites for a public Seder. They can join at Chabad. We met at Chabad Seder in Ellicott City. This is what happens at a Chabad Seder. And there's also an invite for Purim. There's always something to do here in Columbia, in Ellicott City. There'll be programs for children and adults. So pleasure having you all here. Thank you again for coming.
Thank you.
And this video will be available online at Chabad Ellicott City after the recording. And thank you to our Carol and to Saitlin, who's captioning our group on Zoom. And I wish you all a wonderful night and a happy Purim.
Thank you. Thank you very much.